Welcome back to Miss Liz IBG. It has been a month since my last video. So glad to finally be here again. Now before I get into today's topic, you might have seen the Save Lily case all over social media, right? A Hong Kong couple campaigned online for the return of their daughter, Lily, taken into care by Swedish authorities. I want to be clear up front. I do not support what that couple did. Their first daughter was born at home in Finland and died at just 1 month old. When Swedish authorities found Lily, she was wearing only pajamas, physically unclean, with severe eczema and serious dental damage. That couple had no legal residencies in Sweden, moving around trying to avoid authorities, and kept Lily completely off-grid. No birth certificate, no medical records, no social contact. They even refused vaccines and medical treatment on their so-called religious grounds. I'm sorry, but that is not parenting. That's basically child abuse and neglect. However, the case made me ask a deeper and hard question. Why do some parents genuinely believe they're doing what's right when they're actually causing harm to the children? Let's talk about it today. That Hong Kong couple, of course, is an extreme case, but the pattern underneath is more common than we'd like to admit. Let me give you some examples here. Basically, these examples are what I saw when I was still teaching in Hong Kong. Like some parents who would book 5 after-school tutorial sections a week, math, English, Chinese, science, music, because they want the best for the child's future. Even when the child is exhausted, has no room to breathe, the parents would say, "This is for your own good." Or some parents who would plan every activity, every hobby for the child. And when the child said, "I don't like it, I'm so tired," the parent would say, "You will thank me one day." Some other parents who even controlled their kid when their kid becomes an adult, like giving opinions on where they should live or who they should marry, because in that family, love is always tied to control. Different severity, but the same root problem. The child's voice doesn't count. Feel free to leave a comment below if any of these sound familiar to you. In your family, in your community, in your city, or even in your country. When the child is still a baby, of course, we as parents make all the decisions because that simply is our job and responsibility. However, here's something a psychologist named Diana Baumrind spent her whole career studying, and I think every parent needs to hear this. She found that the most effective parents aren't the straightest ones, and they're not the most permissive ones either. The best outcomes came from parents who adapt as the child grows up. When the children are small, you set the rules, of course. Clear boundaries, firm guidance. That's healthy. But as they get older, the relationship needs to shift. Less controlling, more explaining, gradually moving from authority to guide to trusted friend. The parents who couldn't make that shift, their children either rebelled completely or became so dependent that they lost their own voice. Psychologist Erik Erikson add another layer to this. He showed that during the teenage years, the child's main psychological job is to figure out who they are, their identity, their values, their own voice. If a parent is still controlling everything at that stage, the child can't do that work. They either fight back hard or they quietly disappear inside themselves. And that quiet disappearing, I do not just see it, I once lived it. Because in the past, I was also somewhat a controlling parent. You see, I previously homeschooled my 2 children back then for years when we were still living in Hong Kong. And as a teacher myself, planning just came naturally, like lesson plans, schedules, activities, all of it. I genuinely thought I was doing my best because I love my kids so much, and because my childhood was lack of love, support, a lot of neglect, so I wanted to do so much for my children. However, at that time, I didn't notice that I gradually became more controlling. Not out of bad intention, but it became a habit. As I said, I love and cared my 2 children so much, and I basically didn't want them to feel I didn't love them enough. So I kept doing more, planning more, controlling more. Then my daughter started pulling away. She became quieter, stopped sharing her thoughts, cried behind my back. But when she was in front of me, she pretended to be happy. At that time, I still didn't notice any of that at all. Because, apart from homeschooling, I was also running my own business, like teaching English lessons to make sure I can bring income to my family like that. Of course, I was exhausted. Imagine homeschooling, also working, making money like that. So that time I told myself, she was just growing up, she'll be all right. And then I never stopped to ask her, what's the reason that she's starting to pull away? Simply because I never gave her space to speak. Later, we moved to the UK. She went from homeschool straight into mainstream year 6 here. Even she speaks perfect English. But everything else was completely different, I would say. The adjustment was brutal, and the gap between us got even wider. Until one day, I found out that she had been hurting herself. On her arm, on her thigh. I'm not going to rush past that, because if you're a parent, you will understand. It wasn't just fear I felt. It was full of regret. I felt like I had failed my daughter while believing I was being a good mum. I had been so busy talking, planning, teaching. I had forgotten to listen. Anyways, after that, everything changed. I stopped lecturing. I stopped pushing. I just waited patiently until my daughter felt safe again to talk to me. Until she chose to trust me again. To be the real her in front of me. No more controlling, no more blaming, no more fixing, no more criticizing. Just unconditional love and space for her to grow, to find her own identity and voice. I stopped dismissing her faults. I met her where she was. Slowly, it took time, but she came back to me. Fast forward 2 years later, we normally talk for an hour at dinner time. She writes me letters and thank you cards. birthday cards, Mother's Day cards. Once I told her that how sorry I was, she wrote me back with something, telling me like, yes, Mummy, it was hard, but that past experience also made me stronger, gave me a depth most kids would never have. Most importantly, brought us to where we are now. After reading her letter, I cried. Not because she forgave me, more than that, because she had found the language to understand her own story. She found herself. That's what children can do when we finally give them some space to grow up. So, back to today's topic. What makes a good parent? I would say it's not having all the answers. It's not protecting your child from every risk. And it's definitely not controlling everything, then calling it love. It's being willing to grow alongside your child. When they're small, you lead. As they grow, you shift. From director to guide. From authority to friend. From the one who speaks more to the one who listens more. Baumrind called it adaptability. Erikson called it giving your child space to find themselves. Miss Liz calls it finally learning to listen. Your children know whether you are really listening. They always know. So please, when you are really listening, listen not just with your ears, but with your heart. And if they're still talking to you, please treasure it. And if they have gone quiet, it's not too late. You can still fix it. And that's where the relationship lives. I hope you found this video useful. And if you would like more about parenting skills, things that touch your heart, you can subscribe, you can give me a like, you can share it to the parents who might need to hear this, and I'll see you in the next one.